Hello everybody, welcome back to Maths. Hope everyone's doing okay. If you're new around here, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button, and if you find the video useful, just drop a like on the video. So in today's session, we're going to be looking into compound interest, and you are going to need yourself a calculator. Doesn't have to be scientific, although it would be really helpful. So in this first question, it says Sam puts £3,000 in the bank. He gets an interest rate of 5% and he leaves it there for 4 years. How much money will he have at the end of the 4 years? So let's write down exactly what's going on. So we're going to start by writing down the 3,000. Okay, and then we're going to tackle the rate of interest, which is 5%. We need to think about what is the rate of interest multiplier. Okay, so rate of interest of 5% means it's increasing by 5% for 4 years in a row. So what's the multiplier? Well, I need 5% increase, so let's look at that. If I do a 5% increase, I start with 100%, I then add 5%, so it becomes 105%. So let's just put 105% like this. Now we need this as a decimal. So to find this as a decimal, we divide it by 100. So this number is now 1.05. But we need this as a multiplier. So if I were to multiply the 3,000 by 1.05, that will make it 5% larger. But now notice it says we want this for 4 years. So what we do is we multiply it by itself 4 times. Okay, so what this will do is this will be for the first year, for the second year, the third year, and the fourth year. However, notice that's a lot of calculations, because what if it said 10 years or 20 years? So what do? We can use an indice, can't we? So instead of timesing by 1.05 4 times, we can put to the power of 4 here, and we can just erase everything else. And yeah, that's all we need to do. Let's just type it into the calculator then. So 3,000 times by 1.04, all to the power of 4. And let's write down what this answer is. Let's just change that to them. So that's going to be £3,509. And this is in monetary terms, so we want this to 2 decimal places always, unless the question states otherwise. Okay, so this is going to be to 0.58, let's call this. Okay, so yeah, that's all you need to do. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in this question, it says Alex puts £2,500 in the bank. She gets an interest rate of 2%, but this time she leaves it here for 6 years. So let's start with the capital amount. So the original amount, we tend to call that the capital. So just the original, the normal amount, capital, whatever you want to call this. So we start with 2,500. We want to times this by a percentage multiplier to make it 2% larger. Well, let's figure that out. Well, 2% bigger is 102%, and 102% as a decimal is 1.02. So we're going to multiply this by 1.02. Now, it's for 6 years, so what we could do is we could times it by 1.02, times by 1.02, and we do that 6 times. Let's make life easier. Let's put this to the power of 6. And it really is that straightforward. That's all we need to do. Let's type that in, see what our answer is. So 2,500 times by 1.02, all to the power of 6. Okay, and our final answer comes out as £2,815. Remember, 2 decimal places because it's money. So pound and pence, so 0.41. Okay, and that's it. That's all you need to do for that type of question. Let's now take a look at one where the money decreases. Okay, so this is depreciation. So we've got Susie buys a car for £12,000. You got a lot of money. It goes down in value by 20% each year. So what's the value of the car after 5 years? So we want the percentage multiplier. It's still a multiplier. Even though it's decreasing, it's still a multiplier. So whether it increases or decreases, we want the multiplier. So we're going to start with 100%. I'm going to decrease 100% by 20%. That is now going to give me 80%. Now we want the number 80% as a decimal, which is going to give us 0.8. Now 0.8 is our multiplier. So let's start off with the £12,000. Okay, we're going to times that by the multiplier, which is the 0.8. And we want this after 5 years, so we put this to the power of 5 years. Sometimes I put this as 0.80 to show that it's 80%. Now, that is technically not mathematically literate, I guess you could call it, but I like to put 80 there to show that it's the number 80 as opposed to number 8, because sometimes we get confused with that. Anyway, you don't have to do that, but yeah, 0.8 to the power of 5. So let's stick that in the calculator. So 12,000 times by 0.8, all to the power of 5. And as a decimal, that is going to give us, let's do this, so 3932.16. Obviously a silly number that I've chosen there, but you get the idea. So yeah, hopefully that one makes sense. Now we're only going to do one more question, which is this one. This is the final question for today. Okay, so a house costs 2,000, not 2,000, that would be nice if it was 2,000, 240,000. After 1 year, it depreciates by 5%. So sometimes you might see these kind of questions. So it might depreciate, it might go up and down in different interest rates. It's fine. You don't need to always do to the power of, but you can do power of in certain parts of the question. So let's start off with what we know. So 240,000, that's the initial amount, that's the capital amount. After 1 year, so after year 1, it depreciates by 5%. Are we happy with saying that this is now 95% because it went down by 5%? Okay, so the multiplier is 0.95. Now, because we're not doing it by 5% each year, we can't put this to the power of something. So if it depreciated by 5% for 10 years in a row, we just put it to the power of 10. But that's not the case, so we don't need to do that. So then it says, then for 2 years, it goes up in value. So up in value by 3%. Are we happy that we're looking at 103%? Does that make sense? 103%. So we start with 100%, we increase by 3%, and we're now looking at 103%. So now the multiplier is 1.03. But then it says for 2 years. So we can put this to the power of 2. Does that make sense, what we've just done there? Yeah, so let's stick then to the calculator then. So 240,000 times by 0.95 times by 1.03 all to the power of 2. Okay. By the way, on the calculator, I don't know if you can see this on my screen here. Can you see we've got that silly sort of fractional answer there? If you press on the calculator the S to D button, which I'll show you then, if you press the S to D button, that will convert it from that silly fraction that we don't need into a decimal answer. Okay, so that decimal answer is 241,885.20, like that. Okay, and that's the last question for today. Hopefully that will make sense. Like I said, if this is your first video with me, make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you are new. Right, cheers everyone. Speak soon. See you in the next one.